So now I'd love to introduce to you all Paul Drees from Market Edge. Paul is the Chief Executive Officer of Market Edge. They're a global consulting firm, and they deliver project consulting and management development programs in strategy, marketing, sales, innovation. They're one of our key partners in helping our customers and our members get where they need to be in growing their businesses and growing their processes. And they have an amazing tool set that they have developed over the years for their clients. And they are going to share with us their VUCA tool set. There's a link in there if you haven't downloaded it, but it'll be there. So I'm going to stop sharing so that Paul can put his slides up. And then, Paul, you have an hour to take us through anything. Stop anywhere you like, ask questions, or would you like me to interrupt with questions or just hold those?
Yeah, you can. I'm happy to make this as dynamic and interrupted as possible.
All right, good. So if you've got a question at any moment during this presentation, just type it into the chat window. I am going to be watching that, and I'll let Paul know, and we'll take the question. So this is going to help us get there, right, Paul? Okay, so I'm excited now. Help me feel a little better, get control of an unpredictable situation. You got it. You're on.
All right. Thanks, and good morning to everybody. Can I ask you to, on your Zoom screen, down at the bottom where it says share and reactions, go ahead and pop down there, open that up, and give a thumbs up or an emoji of any type, just to show that the functionality is working, because we're going to use that throughout the presentation. So down at the bottom of your Zoom panel has a reaction little icon. No, maybe not. Laura's shaking her head. No, I can see that at least.
Okay. So we have about 14 or 15 people have said thumbs up. Somebody's got a party going. We want to join them. That's nice.
Excellent.
All right. Yeah.
No.
All right. And we have, just for clarification, 76 people on the call right now. So not everybody gave us the emoji. So I might call out your name if I don't see an emoji. Sorry. All right, we got it.
All right. Well, first, thanks for the great introduction and lead in. The comments to Joanne and the comments to Ralph about not in kind, et cetera. We will exactly come to that through the course of this. I'm Paul Drees with Market Edge. We help folks like yourselves in the areas of strategy, marketing, finance, sales, with either project work or capability development. And as Lynn said, we've provided a tool for you. If you look here or in the chat, you can go to our website, and down that there is a password, VUCA PD 9000. All right, here we go. Question. You can throw something up in the chat. You can shout out loud, unmute yourself if you want. When it comes to market shaping forces that are unpredictable, how do you handle it now? What do you normally do? What's the classic kind of 101 answer to what do we do with unpredictability in market forces?
So you could type something in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
And use an emoji, where if you want to unmute yourself, say a word. I typed in the chat.
Right. And we heard some of this. Nothing.
So repeat the question.
The ostrich approach. Right?
Yeah. So we'll repeat the question, which is, when something's happening out there in the marketplace, what do we do? And it's just, I think you're being very honest, folks, that are, we wait, we react, but we ignore it. We might respond.
Right.
We investigate. We hope for the best. Very nice. We fact check. We understand the key drivers and how it's going to influence us. Collect more information and inform my key network folks.
Typically we see folks in strategic marketing say that, oh, that's where we have to do opportunities and threats, right? And I know we've got a couple of professors and university instructors on the line, and so that would be kind of the undergraduate business 101, maybe 201 answer, right? Oh, opportunities and threats to consider external forces. But really that's basic, too basic, right? It normally leads to a SWOT analysis where you've got 4 or 5 bullets in each one of those boxes, right? And it's the kind of stuff that we all talk about all the time. Oh, big opportunity. Oh, big threat, right? But it doesn't help you go deep enough, right? So we can build tables and dashboards, right? What's been the historical trend? What's our assumption? What's our forecast? Do we think the market's going to stay as it is? Go down? Don't know? Great uncertainty, right? Well, that normally leads us into pest thinking, right? Political, economic, sociological, and technological. Of course, then you have to look out for the consultants and the academics who are always going to try to take a simple concept and make it just a little more clever, just a little more complex. So you get pestle by adding legal, or pestily by adding legal and environmental. Last week, I saw someone used spectacles, cultural, aesthetic, corporate, and sectoral. I'm not even sure exactly what all of those mean, right? So do we really need for every one of the concepts that we talk about to expand it indefinitely? Well, here's what we're going to suggest is what you should be thinking about when you're looking at these external market forces that are hard to predict. Of course, you got to understand what's the impact on the market in our business, right? Low impact, hey, get some sleep. High impact, got to be a focus for leadership. Then we need to look at predictability, and that's what we're talking about in this session. Will it happen? To what extent will it happen? And how does it happen? And that's what leads us to this concept of VUCA, that not only are there a lot of market drivers that are unpredictable, but it's the nature, the characteristic of their unpredictability that's important to understand, because your response is going to be different. So the V is for volatility, rapid change in magnitude and direction. U for uncertainty, not sure if it's going to happen or not, and if it does, right, to what extent. Complex, there are multiple interactive variables, but it's not necessarily clear what that algorithm is unless you're a real expert in the area. And then finally, ambiguous unpredictability, chaotic or opaque situations. So let's take a look at each one of those one at a time, get some examples, and at the end of each one, I'm going to ask you for what examples you have in your area that are like this. Just at a very high level, you know, volatility appears in raw material prices. Joanne talked about that quite a bit. That's a natural source that people go to pretty quickly. And you've seen people like ArcelorMittal respond by putting in dynamic pricing models. I think that dynamic pricing models is something that you're going to see a lot more of in the near future, both from your suppliers and with your customers, you know, especially with the advent of AI. Uncertainty, right? The big obvious ones in the last week are around regulatory and policy changes. Will it happen? Will it not? And if it does, when will it happen? And to what extent will it happen? Right? And so tariffs all over the place, we can talk about those between different nations, different regions, et cetera. But it also happens with legal rulings, right? Who's going to win a contract dispute? Who's going to win an IP dispute? Or regulations that are going to be imposed or implemented in an area, and we're not sure if it's going to happen and when it's going to happen. Complexity, you should think more about, again, those multivariable situations where it's extremely complicated. Somebody like Bosch has to look at hundreds, if not thousands, of different supply parts coming together to make one tier one automotive system, right? And all of those have unpredictability in them. And then finally, ambiguity, right? Anthropic, certainly their marketplace has seemed very ambiguous to greater and lesser degrees over the last couple of months with some of the change that you've seen. I made this slide about a week or two ago before the deep seek implications of the last 2 or 3 days. All right, so let's dive a little bit deeper. Right? See if you recognize this in your business and what are the implications for you? What can you do? All right, volatility. There's an oil price today. There's going to be an oil price tomorrow. We know that, right? And there's going to be an oil price next week and next month, but we don't know if it's going to go up or down and how rapid that change is, right? So this is what a lot of people think of when they think about unpredictability, but it's really just one type, right? And the implications for your business are around being agile, setting up predictive warnings where AI can help a lot. I was talking with a client a couple of weeks ago, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're monitoring this stuff, and we report on it at our quarterly business review." And I'm like, "You're going to wait a whole quarter before realizing that some precious metal that you have has gone up 50%, and you're locked into contracts, et cetera." Right back to Joanne's work. So there's a lot around pricing and contracting, but there's also a lot you can do around inventory and reserves, and really your financial instruments that you can use: insurance, hedging, derivatives. Finance and marketing should be working very closely if volatility is what's driving your concerns in your strategy. All right, just a couple of other examples. Corn, if you look at the corn price over the last 5 years, it's gone almost 3x at times. You can see it up and down. You go, okay, great, but I'm not a farmer. Yeah, but maybe you or your competition uses corn starch or is dependent on corn ethanol, right? So it's not just whether or not it's your primary product or your primary raw material, right? It's who else in the value chain is subject to this and when that knock-on effect might visit you at your front door. And it's not just raw material, it can be other COGS expenses, right? Think about your COGS. If electricity is a big portion of your cost of goods sold and your plant's in Germany, you've got volatility. No, Paul, our plant's in the US and electricity prices are stable. We think they're going to stay stable, right? Not a lot of volatility, but our major competitor is in Germany and they have this. Okay, right? So it's not necessarily a threat or a downside in every situation. That same unpredictability can be an advantage to you if your competitor sees it as a weakness. All right, so open question. What market forces are most volatile for you in your business? Just any shout outs or comments from the group. What are you concerned about right now in terms of volatility? What are those drivers?
Please type it into the chat or unmute and yell it out. It always feels like I have to open the floodgates with something.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, here we go. Copper, hospital reimbursement, tariffs, sustainability, immigration, and the price of labor.
Copper for sure is a volatile driver, right? That I would classically put in here, right?
Steel prices.
But I'm probably going to take hospital reimbursements. We do a lot in medical device, and also tariffs, and I'm going to save them to the next category, uncertainty, and I'll explain why.
All right, so we have leather prices.
Yeah.
Cobalt.
There you go.
Federal funding.
Well, yeah, it depends. If you were running a big research project based on some federal funding, you've had quite a bit of volatility and uncertainty in the last 2 days.
Supplier consolidation at supplier site closures.
Right. Okay, great.
Weather events.
Okay.
AI landscape All right, that looks like everybody's, I've
Okay.
said everybody. Oh, US dollar
Dollar
rate.
rate. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I'd put the commodity prices, the dollar rate, precious metals, things like that, mostly into this volatility. You might see that some of these fit better under some of the other categories, which is fine. They're still important, right? But how you respond to them is probably going to be different.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Let me jump back and go full screen. Okay. So if that's volatility, what's uncertainty? Uncertainty is when we know what the market force is, but it's not necessarily transparent, right? We've probably assumed if A, then B, but we're not really sure is A going to happen. The outcome and the timing of the change remains unclear. The one that's becoming rather imminent is China tariff policy. Right now, it's 25% averaged out in both directions. We've heard numbers as high as 60. We've heard day one. We've heard February 1st, right? So not sure, is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And it's that kind of IO on off that makes it so interesting, right? There, the organizational implication is to try to gather as much information and analyze it as possible, and then do scenario planning, right? And here we're talking about a very specific technique. The most simple version of it is to look at two of your scenario drivers and say, if A happens and B happens, what does the world look like? Right? So if I go up here and I say, I've got a couple of different scenario drivers for mine, right? Maybe it's tariffs, maybe it's immigration policy. If both go this way, what's the world look like? How well does my strategy stand up? What are the implications for marketing, pricing, mix, right? Versus not A, not B in those four combinations. So this is classic. And I know a lot of you have done this. I've seen some of you do this in your business. But now with additional computing power and some additional software, you can do it in 3, 4, 5 dimensions. You don't have to do it simple, plain or 2 dimension. Tariffs and regulatory, absolutely top of mind, but so are legal decisions. You don't know, is your IP going to be granted? Is your IP complaint going to be enforced? Right? That's a kind of yes, no. We're certainly not certain when the decision's going to come, but when it does come, it will change the world for us. Right? Same could be true in terms of contract disputes and judgments. All right. The other place that you see uncertainty, and this may affect some of you that are in automotive especially, or serving into the automotive market, is technology adoption. Right? We're pretty sure that a new technology is going to be adopted, but we don't know how quickly it's going to be adopted. Right? So one example that one of our clients had to deal with was the adoption rate for genetically modified crops. And when the first genetically modified crop came out, which was a herbicide tolerant Roundup Ready soybean, right? It took about 10, 12 years for it to go from introduction to 90, 95% of the market in North America was using it. So as they made forecasts and plans and capital investments for the second major GM crop, sugar beets, right? They thought that it would follow the same pattern. In fact, in less than 2 years, it went to 95% acceptance, right? And led to a very different reality where old products were obsolete and no value. So there was tens of millions of dollars of inventory that was worthless, and the new products that needed to go along that were complementary to this weren't brought on fast enough. Okay. Another area of uncertainty that's more current to us right now is ADAS. So looking at autonomous driving assistance systems, there have been a lot of forecasts about how fast that's going to penetrate, all the way up to full-on driverless Uber taxis, right? But that's an uncertainty. We don't know if it's going to happen, how fast it's going to happen, and those curves tend to change from year to year. Certainly penetration rates of EV vehicles in North America has taken a step back, as an example. So uncertainty, right? We know the force that we're talking about, right? But we don't know the outcome of it and the timing of it, right? Let's dive just a little bit deeper for a second on scenario planning. This is a framework that you can use right away. I don't think that you need a PhD in scenario planning to do this effectively. If you look at another crop protection example, neonicotinoids is a product category, a classification of insecticides. Yeah. Farmers use this to kill the bugs that are eating their crop. And if you wanted to do some scenario, if you were a manufacturer of this or one of the raw materials or the packaging that go into neonicotinoids, you'd really want to understand this because there's a lot of unpredictability in this market the last few years. The way to do that is to first identify what are the scenario drivers, what are the sources of that uncertainty, right? And in the case of neonicotinoids, there's a couple of big ones. It's regulatory. It's been banned in Europe, but not in North America, right? And tariffs, right? Now that it's off patent, a lot of it is made in China. Well, if you're a US manufacturer with US assets, your competition may all of a sudden be looking at a 50 or 60% tariff barrier, an increase of 25 to 35% in the cost of bringing that in, right? And that could be you as the supplier, or it could be you as a channel partner compared to a channel partner that's sourcing their, a different distributor that's sourcing their product from China, right? So those extremes of no new regulatory constraints versus very tight regulatory constraints, and the extremes of high tariffs versus low tariffs create four really different scenarios. If there are no new regulatory constraints, demand's going to be very high. They're very effective products. Farmers love them. And if there are tariffs on Chinese production, and you don't have Chinese assets, you're making yours in the United States or someplace else at significantly lower tariffs, this is going to be, Mardi Gras for you, right? Whereas if there are heavy regulatory constraints and no tariffs, all of the overcapacity in China is going to come flooding in. You want to get out of the market, right? Or minimize your exposure to this, right? And where you have a production schedule that says you have to make the stuff 6 months before it's going to be sold, put it in inventory, and then pray. Understanding those two scenarios and the implications for your go-to-market strategy are pretty important. So that's a technique that if you feel you have a lot of uncertainties around tariffs, around regulations, around IP, around yes/no type decisions, scenario planning can be a great asset to you, and it's pretty straightforward. So same question as before. What do you think are the most uncertain, unpredictable market drivers that you're facing? We saw the tariffs before. I'd put the hospital reimbursements in here. What else do you have?
All right, so go ahead, start typing. EPA regulatory changes.
Yeah, that's a good one, Laura. And then John, excellent with the second and tertiary effects, right? Yeah, we can do whatever we want, America, right? But retaliation is possible, and we don't know what that's going to be.
Future carbon taxes.
Yep. And 4 years is not forever, right? So some of the changes you're seeing now could come swinging back, right? So good one, Kim. Thank you. Okay. More around the regulation. Great. Okay. All right. So after uncertainty comes complexity. Right? So what are we talking about there? These are going to be unpredictable market forces that are generally well known, but not appreciated. Okay. So what's that a picture of in the upper right? That's me on a typical weekend morning when I go out to the garage and there's one of the cars that's broken down and I pop the hood and it's a lost cause right away. Okay. There is a connection between all the stuff that's under there, but it is not my subject matter expertise and I am not going to fix it. I can fumble around, I can push and I can poke and I can probe, but this is analogous to complex unpredictability in your business. There will be parts of the business, maybe supply chain, maybe at finance, right, that are very, very complex and adding difficult unpredictability to your business, right? Someone knows how to do it. There's an underlying algorithm, but it's not necessarily evident to you, to the managing director, to the CEO. So what do you need to do? Hire for proven expertise, right? That could be outsourcing, insourcing, but heavy emphasis on expertise and heavy emphasis on proven, right? One of the best tools there is Monte Carlo analysis. Monte Carlo is an old technique. Show of thumbs, maybe acknowledgement from the bottom. How many folks have used Monte Carlo? It's basically a bolt-on over top of Excel that lets you input ranges of probabilities for different variables, and therefore you get a range of outputs. All right, so a few folks.
Yep. Couple of
Uh,
thumbs up. Yep.
Monte Carlo for sure, especially with the availability of analyzing existing data sets, is more valuable than ever. If you find yourself facing an extremely complex investment decision or unpredictability in your business, I'd look for some Monte Carlo help to try to model that. And AI can help and is going to be helping more over the next year or two as it continues to expand its influence, right? What you need to do, though, is guard against overconfidence and optimism. Oh, Paul, we know it's very complex, but we understand it all. We're very, very smart. Okay. Well, we're going to take a look at that in a little bit. But those are two of the biases that get in the way of managing VUCA markets. So some examples of complexity, supply chain. Right? How many of you are involved in forecasting and S&OP exercises? You've probably seen the unpredictability go up in that if you're really in touch with your customers and you're listening to what they're telling you, they're less certain. So first, strategic marketing 101, you've got to really understand the value chain. And that value chain might be very complex if you look at hydrocracking, or if you dig deeper in, even on, just one step in there in refining, and you go deeper and deeper, you get to some very layered complexity very quickly, right? Go get the proven experts that know what they're doing in this space, right? They may exist in your organization in a different division or a different role, right? You may have to go outside for it. Okay, so same question as before, right? What are the market forces that you find complex in your business area right now? And what's changed? What's different that's on the list now that wouldn't have been on the list as being complex 5 years ago?
So we have a couple from before, maybe open source technologies,
Yeah.
power needs in an AI environment.
I like the union action potential,
Yeah.
Ashley, from the previous one. That's a classic uncertainty.
Yeah.
We think it's probably going to happen, but we don't know when, and we don't know how bad it's going to be, right? So again, looking for complexity. What are the unpredictable market drivers that are super complex in your business? Sustainability demands versus cost realities. Okay. And trying to figure out which of them are demands versus wants. Right?
Yeah. complex markets with specifiers, influencers, direct buyers. Everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah. That'll also bleed over into the next category of ambiguity, Patrick, right?
Knowledgeable and empowered customers.
Mhm.
Distributors sourcing their own products. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we see that with a number of the client projects that we're on. There's always there's often a make or buy decision inside the channel, or they can go to somebody else and get a white label or a dealer-owned brand produced for them, right? That adds complexity. Yes. Thank you, Sandy. Healthcare, healthcare, healthcare. There's very little in healthcare that isn't complex. And just to drive home the response for complexity, hiring a subject matter expert, right? If you're the person on the table and they're going in to do a complex procedure, you want the subject matter expert. You don't want someone that says, hey, I heard about this. I read a book. I watched a video. I saw it on YouTube. You want the person that's been there, done it, and done it a bunch of times. The more complex the unpredictable market driver is, the more you need proven expertise. All right. Ambiguous, the last category, right? In VUCA terminology, ambiguity is there is a cause and effect relationship, but it's completely unclear, right? It's the fog of war. It's the unknown unknowns. And this often appears when you're in chaos or crisis. In those situations, leadership must be present in the business or market, right? You can't sit in the ivory tower in the corner office or in your office with the door closed, or if you're working from home with your feet up, right, and your Zoom camera off, right? You've got to be outside in the market, listening and feeling for small data points, forming a hypothesis, and then testing those hypotheses quickly, right? This can happen if you have an unexpected large customer opportunity. And all of a sudden, this happened. We had a client that literally on Christmas Eve at about 9 o'clock in the morning got 3 or 4 urgent calls from a target key account they've been trying years to break in. And all of a sudden, they were getting all of these openings at the same time saying, hey, we'd really like to do business with you next year. And can we meet? Can we get a sample? Can we do all these things that for 4 or 5 years, right, they had been avoiding? So what's even happening there? What's driving that, right? Got to get into the marketplace quickly, form some hypotheses, right? And again, something that wasn't, that was on this slide a couple of weeks ago when I put this deck together, right? Geopolitical impacts on innovation in semiconductors. There's so much ambiguity, lack of clarity about what does and doesn't work, whose chips do you need, what's going to happen with tariffs, with IP, et cetera, right? If you are somehow contributing to innovation in semiconductors, it would be a very, very ambiguous market space, right? So same question as before. What are those super ambiguous, unpredictable market forces that you're seeing in your world?
I feel the typing. Give it a second.
So Louise put the personalized medicine in the previous one, but it could actually also go here, especially if you're the patient or you're the caregiver for a patient and it's a crisis situation, right? And you're trying to evaluate different technologies, standards of care, where you want to get the person treated, and it's the clock's ticking. Okay.
AI role in healthcare.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Very uncertain. You start with HIPAA and say, oh, nothing can be done. And then you realize how quickly it is. Right? All right. Let's do this. Let's take a look at the tool we've provided for you if we can. All right. So if you've had a chance to download that, great. Look in the chat. There's a link to that and the download. Let me roll this over. You should see now what the tool looks like. If you open it up and you get a security warning, there are macros and Visual Basic that drive the tool. So you have to, before you open it, put it up on your desktop, put it in a trusted space. You may need to right click on it, go into properties, and unblock your security settings for it. But like all of our tools, it's set up cover sheet to put in the relative information, right? There's some instructions. So if you forget, right, you can go step by step. But basically, you're going to go and put in whatever you think are those market factors that are VUCA, and you're going to score them and start to create a map. So we could put in the oil price, right? And then we could put in a description of West Texas Intermediate, greater than 100 or less than 50. That's going to be a problem for us if either one of those things happen. And we say, this is volatility. Our ability to predict that is fairly high, score it an 8. And the impact on our business is medium, that's a 5, okay? And so you start to build up a map that looks like this, that has all of the different market factors, lots of detail behind the scenes, and then you're categorizing it. Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you remind us of the password? I know it's back there somewhere, but
Sure. Hold on just a second.
oh wait, here it is. VUCA
Yeah.
PD 9000, all lowercase. VUCA PD 9000.
There you go.
Thanks. Sorry.
No worries. And if you don't have the tool downloaded or you're struggling with it, we'll work with you offline after this. Just shoot me a note, or I'll put up a help desk link that will help you get this set up and actually work through an example with you if that's helpful. All right. So you're going to put in all of those, and then you're going to switch over to the output, and you're going to get, this kind of graph that looks like that maps where they are. I've got a redacted example in the deck, right? That comes, it's actually the composite of 2 different clients where we've done this recently, and shows this combination of volatile things, right? Where if the impact's high and the predictability is low, you're definitely going to want to get in there with some kind of financial instrument, hedging, insurance, derivatives, etc. And then things where it's, complex. And again, that's where we're probably going to want to bring in outside expertise, either outside your division, your business, right, that really knows what they're talking about in that space. So if we shift back to the deck, right, it looks like that. And then, our guidance, in addition to knowing what type of unpredictable market force it is, volatile, uncertain, complex, or ambiguous, is to think about where it is on the map. For those things that are high predictability, we're either pretty sure it's going to happen or pretty sure it's not going to happen. And especially if it's big impact, they have to be the focus of leadership. They have to be in our base case, et cetera. Pretty obvious. For those things that are low predictability, we really don't know what's going to happen, but they could have a big impact. There, it's different kinds of risk management, especially financial risk management. In the middle, moderate predictability, right? A, B, got no idea, right? There, scenario planning, contingency planning, Monte Carlo analysis, right? Try to understand and develop new insights. And also very helpful for management teams to agree what's in the bottom. where you can minimize your focus, where you can delegate, where you can get one night's sleep a week, right? What are those things as a management or a leadership team you can agree are unpredictable, but they're low impact? So we're going to stop talking about them. We're going to stop dedicating 20 minutes of every meeting to this topic. All right. So mapping the VUCA factors like this gives you an idea of the different categories and the different responses, but also the impact and predictability lead you to treat them differently again. All right. As you're doing all of this, though, you got to be aware of your biases. All right. I think it's 3 out of the last 6 Nobel Prizes in economics have gone to research and publications around behavioral biases. So just a real quick reminder of what those are. Herd behavior. This is also extremely strong in some companies. It's much more comfortable being wrong and being with all the others. Oh, yeah, right. Than being right and alone. Overconfidence, right? I'm sure we're going to be able to do this on time, on budget, etc. I'm sure I am a much better driver than average. And I'm sure that everybody on the call is much better than average looking. Optimism, right? Yeah, we're going to win, no problem, right? Look at your S&OP forecast accuracy, and it might take you down a notch or two in terms of optimism. By the way, the combination of overconfidence and optimism, right, are most severe the further up the organizational structure you normally go. You normally don't make it into the corner office by being a pessimist and lacking confidence. Right? Belief, perseverance, right? Holding on to something after we've got lots of data that says it's not true. Representativeness. My daughter and I wanted to assess the average height of American males, so we did a survey, right? And we found out it was 6 feet 10 inches. We happened to be standing outside the locker room of an NBA team when we had the conversation. So there was a bit of representativeness bias, right? And you go, oh, Paul, that's a silly example, right? However, we do the same thing in marketing all the time when we say, oh, we're going to do a survey, but we're only going to ask our customers, or we're only going to ask our good customers, right? Representativeness bias is a big challenge, right? Hindsight, I knew it all along, looking in the mirror. Anchoring, once we start on a price, it's really hard to move off of that price. There's a lot of data to support that in B2B negotiations. And then blind spots, failing to recognize we have biases. So if we're going to look at a VUCA world, and we're going to try to map and model some of those unpredictable market forces, just make sure that you've got somebody else in the room that can help and constructively challenge the assumptions that you're making and push back on some of these biases. I think we got time. Let's just test the group and see if we're see how we're doing so far.
Great.
All right. A common approach, and I'm going to need 10 volunteers here. Okay, so just the 10 smartest ones, if you can lean into this. A common approach to predictability is to think about it in terms of confidence intervals, right? I don't know exactly what my biggest key account, what their demand or volume is going to be in 25, but I have a 90% confidence interval. I know with 90% certainty it's between these two numbers, right? So I know it's between 37 and 42. That's what goes into my S&OP, et cetera. All right. I want to test this group and see what your 90% confidence interval is, right, for a specific question, right? So in the chat, right, just don't Google it. We're not testing your search capability. We're testing your forecasting ability. For 1998, WTI crude, what was the average oil price for 1998? If you know the exact answer, you should be on Jeopardy, right? What I'm looking for is a range. I don't know what it was, Paul, but I'm 90% confident it was between X and Y. Okay. So,
All right.
Give me some of those.
18 to 24.
Okay.
John Millard says it's 28.
John, I need two numbers.
25 to 27.
Woo. Yep.
All right. 15 to 20.
Mhm.
10 to 20.
Yep.
18 to 28.
Got it.
22 to 28. 25 to 30. 60 to 75. 12 to 15. One more. Who's got one? 13 to 20.
Super.
All right.
Okay. So if you go to the government and you go to the energy department, they will say that the average price for 1998, which was a year that saw low prices, right? But not abnormally low and very consistent across the year. 1998 was $10.84 a barrel. All right. And if we go backwards then and we say, hey, these were supposed to be our 90% confidence intervals, right? Then let me just score these up real quick. Wrong, 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 wrong. Okay. We got it exactly upside down, guys. We had 9 out of 10 that were wrong. We probably should have had 9 out of 10 that were right. I forget who number 4 was. We'll send you a box of chocolates, right? Well done. But this is a
Chris
great
Smoot.
example.
Yeah.
This is a great example, and it's actually one of the examples that one of the Nobel Prize winners used as part of his original research, right? There are certain things we all think we know a lot more about than we do, and we're overconfident, right? So if you're going to work and survive in this world, you got to be super careful of that. All right, last one. Let me close down if I can. All right, so we did that. Okay. Many of you are strategic marketers, head of marketing groups within your respective companies. What do you need to do, right? Analyze and develop insight. It's not good enough just to have a bullet list. Oh, tariffs. Oh, oil price. What kind of unpredictability is it? What's the impact? And what's your relative confidence that you can predict where or when it's going to happen? That's going to cause you to respond differently. Volatility, look at financial risk options that you have, maintain reserves. Uncertainty, dig deeper, right? Go with scenario planning, right? And look at contingencies. If A and B happen, we're going to do this. If A happens but not B, we're going to do that, right? And that could be alternate suppliers. It could change your target segments, right? Your underlying targeting of different segments and accounts is based on a certain set of assumptions. When the underlying assumption changes because of uncertainty, right? Go back to your targeting models. Complexity, bring in the pros, right? They may exist in another part of your business. You may have to go outside. And ambiguity, get in the market, right? Get out there, talk to your customers, your suppliers, your channel partners, form hypotheses and test it quickly so you can start to clear away some of that fog, right? You'll need some capability, some agility, et cetera. You're never going to eliminate VUCA, and that's not the objective. The objective is to thrive, to be able to do risk management around it, and to also look for those opportunities where you can assert a new strength or take advantage of an opportunity versus your competitors that see that same VUCA and react, as Joanne said, by sticking their head in the sand or playing the role of victim. Right? You need a strategic marketing mindset. We talked about segmentation leading to potentially new value propositions in this kind of world and different pricing. Watch out for your biases. If you don't have insurance, you're probably the insurance product for your customer. All right. Be careful. Right. You've got the Market Edge VUCA tool. Use that, play with it. The tool is not going to split the atom for you, right? And it's not going to win a Nobel Prize, but it helps a group of people think through it and gives you a framework to put your thoughts down, play with ideas, and share something with some common language, right? So if you need a hand with that, setting it up or getting it to work the first time, or just talking through an example, just give us a shout. And then finally, in the deck that we'll have posted, there'll be a couple of references if you want to read more about this topic or look at some examples. So welcome any questions you have, and thank you for your interest and interaction.
Great. So type any questions you have, unless you would like to unmute and ask a question. While folks are typing, I always have a couple of them. So the first question I have in this situation where we are now, where things are changing so rapidly, like how often would you schedule a team meeting just to go over VUCA because it changed on you in the next? I mean, is it a weekly thing these days, or what would you think?
I think if you're in strategic marketing, it better be a daily thing for you individually, right? And then depending on the cadence in your business and a little bit depending on the kind of business that it is, I'd make sure that it's a regular agenda item, but you should be able to handle it more efficiently if you have some frameworks to talk about it, right? Avoid it just becomes oh, I can't believe this, I can't believe that, right? You know, you've got some structure that comes out of the VUCA tool or something similar that says, these are the things we agreed. Have any changed? No? Okay, good. Next topic.
Right. Yeah, so you're basically looking at changes to it rather than having to establish it.
Yeah.
Any suggestions on team configuration that you ought to sit around the table with?
Yeah, okay. At the risk of really stepping into it, this is the kind of diversity that matters, right? You need diversity of thought in the room. I know I have a couple of colleagues who unfortunately think and act very similarly to me. And if the three of us sat down and worked on it together, we'd get the exact same answer. Find a constructive contrarian, not somebody that's miserable to be around, but somebody that asks the question, how do we know? Are we sure? What's changed? When's the last time we updated our data set that formed the hypothesis for that assumption? That's what you need in there, right? New folks to the organization that don't know are great because they ask lots of stupid questions that are like really honest questions.
Yeah, great. All right, so someone disclosed that Joanne had the answer to that question in her Brewer's slide deck. Well, good to know that. Thanks, Jerry. Jerry's always looking at data. All right. And
Luis's comment is also pretty prescient because anchoring is another absolute classic bias, and sometimes those biases work together.
Yeah.
If you're in a big meeting, to your point, Lynn, you're in a big meeting and the first person shouts out what the answer is, and you had a different opinion, you're like, oh, Lynn's been here a long time and she's very, very smart. I better go with Lynn's answer.
Yeah. Some of the smartest leaders I know are the ones that if they're at the top of the food chain in the room, they don't say anything until the very, very end, lest they constrain people, right? So yeah, the answer doesn't come out till later.
Okay.
All right.
Well, if you have anything else, please at any time, reach out, connect on LinkedIn, and or send a note through to either where you got the deck or through Lynn and Rand. Delighted to help you, and good luck as the year unrolls. It'll be interesting.
There was one, something called the Delphi method. Do you know what the Delphi method was, Paul? That's a quiz to you.
I'm not familiar with it, but Jerry, I'll take a look and give you a couple of thoughts. Okay.
Great. All right. Thank you again, Paul. This was great.
Thanks,
and again, everyone knows where to find you, but call us if you can't find them.